Anna stood by the window of her small apartment, gazing at the city lights flickering in the distance. From there, the bustle below seemed like distant chaos, so many lives intertwined. She used to find comfort in that view, in the knowledge that others were also pushing through difficulties. But tonight felt different, weighted by an unspoken tension that seeped into her bones. Connor, her fiancé, was supposed to come over for dinner. Normally, she loved his company. He had a gentle smile and a confidence that had attracted her from the start. Friends teased her about being too cautious, and Connor seemed to unlock a more adventurous side of her. She felt safe letting him in. Yet a subtle anxiety tugged at Anna's heart. Lately, Connor seemed preoccupied. She had noticed phone calls he always walked away to answer. Once she caught a glimpse of his face afterward, drawn, worried, almost desperate. He brushed it off, claiming he was discussing a new business opportunity. She tried to reassure herself that she was overthinking things, but that sense of unease lingered. In her gut, she suspected something was amiss. How could she possibly guess the betrayal that was about to shatter her life? The following week, Anna found herself juggling wedding plans. The florist needed her color palette finalized, the caterer was waiting for her menu selection, and her mother wanted a guest list update. She managed each detail meticulously, determined to have the perfect day. She even bought a new notebook for her wedding notes, color-coding every category. It was her dream wedding, after all. She had waited her entire life for this. Connor appeared supportive but distant. He had always helped choose between variations of cake flavors or invitation designs, though he claimed to hate wedding planning in general. Recently, however, he barely had the energy to feign interest. Whenever she showed him samples or pictures, he nodded absently, eyes flickering toward his phone. Anna assumed the wedding expenses must be weighing on him. She tried to lighten the mood by suggesting a smaller ceremony, but he insisted on their grand celebration. He promised everything was fine financially, even joking about how they might have to tighten belts, only after the wedding. She laughed, believing his reassuring words. Despite the swirling excitement, a nagging sense of foreboding crept through her thoughts. As much as she tried to ignore it, her instincts refused to be silenced. The call came on a Wednesday morning. Anna, scrambling eggs in her tiny kitchen, nearly missed it. At first, she assumed it was another telemarketer, ready to pitch a vacation package. But the voice on the other end sounded more serious. "Hello, this is Deborah from 5 Points Financial. Am I speaking with Miss Anna Ramirez?" "Yes, this is she," Anna answered, mentally trying to recall if she had any business with that company. "I'm calling regarding an overdue notice. Your loan payment for the past 2 months hasn't been made." Anna froze. "I'm sorry, what loan?" she asked, certain there was a mistake. She had never taken out a loan from 5 Points Financial. Deborah double-checked her files. Anna's personal information matched exactly: full name, address, date of birth. The woman on the phone explained that the remaining balance was significant, and action would be taken if payments were not made. Shaken to her core, Anna asked for more details. The rep mentioned the loan was co-signed electronically, but she lived alone, and her name had never left her personal accounts. After hanging up, Anna stared at her phone, heart pounding with dread. Something was terribly wrong. Anna's mind raced as she sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through bank statements on her laptop. The conversation replayed in her head, fueling panic with every passing minute. A sudden thought seized her. Could this be Connor's doing? She quickly dismissed the idea. Surely the man she intended to marry wouldn't do something so deceptive. He was her partner, her future husband. Yet, she couldn't ignore the growing suspicion. She tried to recall every conversation about finances they had ever shared. Connor had never been forthcoming about his debts or assets, claiming he liked to keep money simple. He insisted any large expenses, such as a wedding, were things they'd figure out together. She called 5 Points Financial back, requesting a copy of the loan paperwork. After a lengthy hold, a representative emailed her a scan of the signed documents. When she opened the file, her blood ran cold. There was her name and signature, except Anna knew she had never signed that paper. The signature looked close enough to hers to fool an unsuspecting eye, but with subtle differences. Her heart pounded harder. Who had done this? And how could they? Determined to keep her composure, Anna made an emergency appointment with her bank's fraud department. She printed all the documents and hurried across town, ignoring the drizzle that dampened her coat. Inside the bank's conference room, the officer listened quietly, asked pointed questions, and jotted down notes. Meanwhile, Anna felt her emotions swell: shock, betrayal, and a sinking sense of dread. The officer confirmed what she already suspected: the signature on the loan was likely a forgery. The question was who had enough of her personal information to pull this off. Anna listed the people close to her. A friend? A relative? The idea that Connor might be responsible felt too cruel. Still, the bank officer mentioned that in most cases, the culprit was someone the victim knew intimately. He explained the process. They would open a fraud investigation and coordinate with 5 Points Financial. Anna would need to file a police report. Thoughts swirled in her head as she walked home in a daze. Connor had all her details: social security number, date of birth, everything. But surely he wouldn't risk her credit and future like this. Torn between denial and rising fury, she braced for the painful truth. That evening, Connor arrived at Anna's apartment with an apologetic smile on his face. He claimed he had been busy and forgot they were supposed to meet for dinner. Anna tried to summon a calm facade, though her heart hammered wildly. She handed him a stack of papers, the loan documents. "Do you know anything about this?" she asked, voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside. Connor glanced through them, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he looked trapped. "What is this supposed to be?" he finally asked, faking confusion. "A loan I supposedly took out, but that's my name, my social, and a forged signature." He flicked his eyes upward. "Are you implying I had something to do with this?" His voice carried a wounded edge, but Anna noticed a flicker of panic behind his eyes. She pressed him for answers. Did he recall any situation where her personal details might have been stolen? Connor launched into a defensive tirade: how she could suspect him, the man who loved her? His voice cracked, and he insisted he had no clue about the loan. Anna, unsure whether to believe him, felt her heart splitting between trust and suspicion. 2 days passed, with no resolution. Anna wrestled with conflicting emotions. Connor acted repentant, yet evasive, offering no tangible explanation. She found herself alone in her living room, sifting through every memory and conversation they'd ever shared. A swirl of emotions overwhelmed her: disbelief, hurt, anger. If Connor was innocent, he'd be working with her around the clock to solve this. Instead, he dodged her calls and texted sporadic excuses. Busy at work, swamped with errands, will explain soon. None of it felt right. Anna finally confided in her best friend, Layla. Over warm cups of tea, Layla listened with wide, horrified eyes. She kept muttering phrases like, "I never trusted him," and "you deserve better." Anna snapped back, initially defensive. She wasn't ready to accept that her fiancé could commit fraud against her. But as she spoke, tears gathered in her eyes, fueled by the horrifying possibility that Connor had knowingly placed her in financial jeopardy. After the conversation, Anna felt a new determination harden inside her. If Connor had deceived her, she wouldn't hesitate to seek justice. Loyalty could only stretch so far. Betrayal had a way of igniting a fire that could not be easily extinguished. Anna decided to confront Connor more aggressively. She invited him to a neutral spot, a quiet coffee shop she loved, away from the prying eyes of their families. Connor arrived visibly tense, searching for an easy smile that never fully surfaced. She motioned for him to join her in a corner booth. She cut straight to the point. "I need a real explanation," she demanded. "If you had nothing to do with this, help me figure out who did." Connor placed his hands on the table, fiddling with his coffee cup. He repeated his claims of innocence, but his voice wavered. Anna then mentioned the possibility of hiring a private investigator. His face paled. Something in his expression flickered. Fear, perhaps. For a split second, she could have sworn she saw guilt. But he covered it quickly, shifting to anger. "You don't trust me. If I say I'm innocent, I mean it. Isn't that enough for you?" Those words cut Anna. Had he always been this dismissive, or was she noticing it now because the stakes were so high? Without a meaningful answer, she stood and walked out. She refused to let him dodge the truth any longer, even if it cost her their relationship. Anna wasted no time calling her uncle, a retired detective who was usually the first to spot a lie. She carefully laid out the situation, her suspicions, and the contradictory behavior Connor displayed. Her uncle listened, occasionally interjecting with pointed questions about timelines and evidence. He didn't mince words. "This has Connor's fingerprints all over it," he said, calm but firm. "No one else benefits from forging your signature on a loan, unless they're counting on you not discovering it until it's too late." Anna's heart tightened with a jolt of pain. Hearing her uncle's verdict made it more real. Though part of her still clung to the possibility of Connor's innocence, logic was an unforgiving judge. She thanked her uncle for his guidance and noted his advice: gather more proof, keep meticulous records, and prepare for the worst. That night, she sat alone in her bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles underscored her eyes, and an unfamiliar expression marred her features, anger mixed with heartbreak. If this was truly Connor's doing, what else had he been lying about? Images of wedding gowns and honeymoon destinations flitted through her mind like ghosts of a future she no longer recognized. Anna decided to check her credit report in case there were more surprises. Nervous energy propelled her as she navigated the website, answering security questions to access her file. Her heart pounded with each section loading. The loan from 5 Points Financial was indeed there, glaring in large amounts overdue. Then her eyes drifted down to discover another credit line she hadn't recognized. Flipping between tabs, she confirmed that once again, the addresses and contact details matched hers. Another forged signature. The date of opening this credit line? 2 months prior. She inhaled sharply, feeling nausea swirl in her stomach. The loan wasn't a one-time accident. Someone was systematically exploiting her identity. Gathering her courage, she picked up the phone and dialed Connor's number. He didn't pick up. She texted him screenshots, demanding an explanation. No response. The anger that surged within her was unlike anything she'd known. Her trust had been shattered, and panic rippled through her, imagining the mounting debt she now faced. Anna knew she had to protect herself. She scoured online resources about identity theft, reading until her eyes blurred. Her heartbreak was quickly transforming into righteous fury, fueling a determination she never expected she'd need. After days of silence, Connor showed up unannounced at Anna's door late one evening. His eyes were bloodshot, and a panicked tremor underlined his voice. Before she could send him away, he pushed inside, insisting he needed to talk. She stood by the living room table, arms crossed, waiting for his explanation. He confessed, partially. According to Connor, he had taken out the initial loan in her name to cover some unexpected debts. His voice cracked as he blamed everything on desperation, claiming his business had been on the verge of collapse. When pressed, he admitted forging her signature. As for the second credit line, he insisted he had no knowledge of that. Anna didn't believe him. She stood there, stunned, feeling her world implode. The man she loved, who promised forever, had manipulated her finances behind her back. Rage swelled in her chest, but an even heavier weight, humiliation, settled over her. How could she have been so blind? Anna demanded he leave, but Connor dropped to his knees, pleading for forgiveness. He even promised to pay everything back once his business turned around. Despite the swirl of anger and heartache, a small part of her pitied him. But pity wasn't enough to erase betrayal. Anna sought legal counsel the very next day. A stoic attorney named Miss Delacroix listened carefully to her saga of forgery, debt, and broken trust. The woman's face remained professionally neutral, but her voice carried empathy as she explained possible routes for Anna to protect herself. Miss Delacroix stressed that if Anna didn't act fast, she could be held liable for the loans. Even with proof of forgery, the burden often fell on victims to clear their names. They discussed filing an official police report, pursuing identity theft charges against Connor, and alerting credit bureaus. Anna fought tears through it all, taking notes as Miss Delacroix outlined a strategy. This was so far removed from her dream engagement. She had once believed Connor was her perfect match. Now she found herself investigating him like a criminal. Heartbreak gave way to steely resolve. She needed to protect herself, even if it meant going to war with the man she loved. As she left the office, crisp papers in hand, a bitter realization struck her. Whatever future she had imagined with Connor was irreparably destroyed. Her anguish was undeniable, but beneath it lurked a fierce resolve to see justice served and secure her own peace of mind. Walking through the bustling city streets, Anna tightened her coat against the cold gust. She clutched the folder of legal documents, each page a testament to Connor's deceit. Her phone vibrated. Another desperate text from him, begging her to understand. She ignored it. Later that evening, she drafted a formal letter disputing the loan at 5 Points Financial, attaching copies of the forged signatures. The words felt strangely empowering to write, almost as if each sentence was a step toward reclaiming her life. She faxed, emailed, and mailed the dispute, determined not to let any bureaucratic gap slow her progress. She also began compiling every piece of evidence that pointed to Connor. Bank statements showing suspicious transactions, emails referencing shared obligations that she never agreed to. In the process, she found smaller, earlier signs of betrayal. A subscription paid with her card, a mysterious online payment. It made her wonder just how long Connor had been deceiving her. Exhaustion gnawed at her, but Anna refused to back down. If Connor expected her to crumble under the weight of heartbreak, he would soon realize his mistake. She was done playing the victim. The next phase of her plan involved something she once feared but now embraced, confronting him publicly. Anna contacted her close friends, people who once admired Connor, and confided in them about the situation. At first, many of them were shocked, some even skeptical. After all, Connor had projected an image of a charming, supportive partner. But as Anna shared tangible evidence, disbelief gave way to outrage on her behalf. Support began pouring in. A friend offered to help her investigate any ties Connor might have beyond what she already knew. Another had connections to a local reporter who sometimes covered consumer fraud stories. The idea of public exposure both horrified and intrigued Anna. Would it be a step too far, or would it ensure that justice was done? While sorting through these possibilities, she felt a glimmer of empowerment. She had a community behind her. She wasn't alone. Yes, she was humiliated, but the storm of betrayal no longer consumed her as it once did. Her pain found a channel, righteous anger that demanded restitution. She watched from her window as the sun sank over the skyline, painting the sky in brilliant streaks of orange and red. In that moment, Anna realized she would never return to her old self. Her innocence had been fractured, but a stronger, fiercer version of her was emerging. A week later, Anna requested a meeting with Connor and both their families. She organized it at her parents' house under the pretext of settling wedding details. Connor arrived, looking gaunt and tense. Her parents, who had always welcomed him warmly, watched him now with suspicion. His own parents, proud people who boasted about their son's entrepreneurial spirit, seemed uneasy. Once everyone was seated around the living room, Anna began. She laid out the forged documents, highlighted the sums owed, and provided timelines that made it clear Connor had orchestrated the entire scheme. Gasps rippled through the room. Her father's face darkened with anger. Her mother pressed a trembling hand to her chest. Connor attempted to respond, but his words stumbled. He insisted it was all a misunderstanding. His parents tried to intervene, but their voices wavered. The evidence was undeniable. Watching their shock and horror unfold brought Anna a bitter sense of justice. For once, the truth wasn't hidden behind polite smiles. She then announced that the wedding was canceled, effectively dismantling the future they had planned. The gathered families gaped in stunned silence. Anna held her head high, though her heart pounded relentlessly. This was her final stand. No more lies, no more deceit. Connor's parents cornered Anna after the meeting. They pleaded for mercy, insisting that their son had simply been under immense financial pressure. They offered half-hearted apologies and even hinted at covering part of the debt themselves to smooth things over. Anna listened, trying to maintain composure. She felt empathy for them. After all, they were reeling from a betrayal too. But in her mind, nothing could erase the profound betrayal. Though she had once imagined them as her future in-laws, that dream was shattered beyond repair. She thanked them politely but firmly rejected any attempt to gloss over the incident. Connor's decisions brought us here. If you choose to help him, that's your call. But this debt is not mine to shoulder. The steely resolve in her voice left no room for negotiation. Walking away, Anna couldn't shake a lingering sadness. She had genuinely cared for them. But now she saw a willingness to enable Connor's manipulations. She wondered how long they had turned a blind eye to his faults. She told herself it no longer mattered. This wasn't her burden to carry. The seeds of accountability had been planted, and she was ready to see them grow into full-blown karma. Later that week, Anna filed an official police report. It felt surreal explaining to an officer how her fiancé had forged her signature. The officer's empathic gaze revealed how common such betrayals were, yet each one carried its unique heartbreak. A swirl of guilt, shame, and grim determination filled Anna. Filing charges was a formidable step, one that might lead to Connor's criminal record, but she had no other path to protect herself and reclaim her credit. On her way out, she noticed her reflection in the station's glass door. Shoulders squared, chin lifted. This wasn't the timid woman who once hesitated to question her partner. This was someone reborn from the ashes of betrayal. She clung to that realization. She was stronger than she ever thought possible. Uncertain what might come next, she mentally rehearsed everything Miss Delacroix had warned her about. A legal battle could be lengthy and draining. Connor might attempt to discredit her. But no matter how messy it became, Anna vowed to see it through. She would not allow him to slip away unscathed, leaving her to bear the financial and emotional aftermath alone. Hope shimmered dimly in her chest. Yes, there would be justice, and perhaps, in that reckoning, a new future would finally take shape. One late evening, Anna received an unexpected message from an unknown number. The text read, "I know what Connor did. Let's talk." Suspicion churned in her gut, but curiosity won. She arranged a meeting in a public cafe, and a woman named Marissa appeared. Nervous, Marissa introduced herself as Connor's former business partner. They spoke in hushed tones. Marissa explained that she'd been defrauded by Connor too. He'd siphoned off company funds, leaving her to face creditors and a tarnished reputation. "He's done this before," she confided, her voice trembling with remembered fury. "He manipulates people who trust him and uses their credentials to secure loans. Then he vanishes." Anna's eyes widened. This pattern was more extensive than she'd realized. Resentment and outrage flared inside her. Connor had been a con artist all along. She felt a pang of guilt for dismissing earlier red flags, but she couldn't dwell on that now. Marissa came prepared. She handed Anna a folder filled with documents linking Connor to multiple cases of financial wrongdoing. Anna's heart pounded as she saw the same cunning methods repeated. A sense of sisterhood formed between them, bound by a shared betrayal. United in their anger, they vowed to expose him fully. Armed with Marissa's evidence, Anna arranged another meeting with her attorney. Ms. Delacroix's practiced composure cracked into a rare smile when she saw the trove of incriminating documents. This was the breakthrough they needed, hard proof that Connor had a pattern of financial deceit. They strategized. Anna would update law enforcement on Connor's wider history, bolstering the case against him. If he faced multiple charges from multiple victims, it would be far more difficult for him to evade serious legal consequences. She also considered issuing a public statement or working with a journalist to expose the full scope of his misdeeds. But Miss Delacroix warned her to tread carefully. Public exposure carried risks. Slander lawsuits could arise if anything she said was deemed untrue. Anna, however, had no intention of lying. She possessed factual evidence, documents bearing Connor's signature, and transaction records. She would speak only the truth. Leaving the attorney's office, Anna felt an electric energy coursing through her. The heartbreak that once paralyzed her now fueled a relentless pursuit of justice. She no longer felt sorry for Connor, nor did she desire his affection. All she wanted was to reclaim her life, ensuring he'd never hurt another person the way he had hurt her. The moment for public confrontation arrived at a charity gala that Anna and Connor were both scheduled to attend. Months before, they had accepted the invitation as a couple, promising to contribute to an event supporting underprivileged students. The irony was painful, but Anna decided the public venue could serve her purpose well. She arrived in a sleek, understated dress. Connor, clearly caught off guard by her presence, wore a forced smile that failed to mask his unease. Their acquaintances, unaware of the brewing storm, assumed they were still engaged. Anna moved through the crowd with poise, politely acknowledging guests who congratulated her on the upcoming wedding. At the right moment, as the organizers called for an intermission, she stepped forward. She addressed the room, explaining she and Connor would no longer be marrying. Murmurs rippled across the audience. She calmly outlined, without delving into every gritty detail, that Connor had been forging her signature for personal financial gain. She assured everyone that legal action was underway. Connor's face flushed crimson. He tried to speak, but no words came. Whispers swelled, eyes turned toward him with bewilderment and disgust. Standing tall in front of the crowd, Anna felt years of pent-up betrayal lift from her shoulders, replaced by a deep, satisfying resolve. The fallout from the gala confrontation was swift. People who had admired Connor's charm now questioned everything about him. Social media buzzed with rumors, half-truths, and occasionally sensational claims. Anna watched from the sidelines, grateful that she'd spoken her piece clearly. She refused to engage in online mudslinging, opting instead to let the official process handle things. Connor, on the other hand, tried to spin the narrative. He posted lengthy justifications, blaming business partners, the economy, anyone but himself. Yet the tangible evidence against him was mounting. More victims emerged, emboldened by Anna's public stand. They, too, demanded accountability. Financial institutions, alerted by the buzz, investigated suspicious activity on accounts linked to Connor. The walls were closing in on him, and from what Anna's attorney relayed, it appeared certain charges against him would stick. Though she felt a pang of empathy for the man she once loved, her main emotion was relief. She no longer had to fear the phone ringing with another creditor demanding money she never borrowed. Karma, it seemed, was unfolding in real time. The community that once supported Connor's ventures now distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with deception and fraud. Anna observed everything with a sense of vindication. Her nightmare was finally becoming his downfall. As Connor's legal troubles mounted, he attempted to contact Anna repeatedly. At first, she ignored his messages. Eventually, at her attorney's urging, she saved them as potential evidence. Each voicemail contained frantic pleas, claims of misunderstanding, or sudden declarations of love. He begged for her to drop the charges, promising to find a way to repay her. Anna had once fantasized about hearing him apologize, but the real thing felt hollow. She sensed his desperation wasn't about love or remorse, it was about self-preservation. The illusions that once blinded her had shattered, revealing a cold manipulator underneath. Her resolve hardened further when she learned from Marissa that Connor had been funneling money into secret accounts. He never intended to repay his debts. Every tearful phone call, every romantic text message, smoke and mirrors aimed at persuading Anna to let him off the hook. Enough was enough. She directed all further communication to her lawyer. No more private calls, no more tearful pleas. Connor would have to face the full weight of legal and social repercussions. Anna wasn't cruel. She simply understood this was the only way to achieve lasting justice for herself and anyone else he'd deceived. The day of Connor's preliminary hearing arrived, marked by gray skies and a biting wind. Anna approached the courthouse with a mix of dread and determination. On one hand, she'd never expected to step foot in such a place under these circumstances. On the other, she felt a sense of closure drawing near. Inside, the sterile walls hummed with tense energy. Connor sat at the defense table, flanked by his lawyer. He glanced her way, but she returned a steady, impassive look. This was no longer about personal feelings. It was about righting a wrong. The proceedings were straightforward. The prosecutor read the charges: fraud, identity theft, and forgery. Evidence was presented: bank records, notarized statements, digital trails linking Connor to multiple financial schemes. Anna listened, her jaw clenched, trying to remain calm as her own name was repeated in the list of his crimes. When the judge turned to Connor, asking for his plea, he muttered, "Not guilty." Anna felt a sting of fury, but Ms. Delacroix patted her arm, reminding her that this was just the beginning. The trial would come, and the burden of proof would be on the prosecution. Still, walking out of that courtroom, she felt a gust of fresh air. Justice was in motion. As trial preparations loomed, Anna took inventory of her emotional state. The pangs of heartbreak and humiliation had largely transformed into resolve and a surprising sense of liberation. She had discovered strength within herself that she never knew existed. She found solace in her friends, family, and even in her daily routines. Walks in the park became moments of reflection, reminding her that life continued outside of legal battles and public drama. She reconnected with painting, an old hobby that offered a calming escape from the turmoil. Brushstrokes on canvas felt like a metaphor for her own process, layer by layer creating something new and beautiful out of chaos. The swirl of wedding plans had been replaced by a singular drive toward justice. And though she missed the naive happiness she once had, she acknowledged it was built on a lie. She would much rather face the truth, painful as it was, than live in false security. With each passing day, the court date loomed closer, and she knew her testimony would be crucial in sealing Connor's fate. She practiced with Miss Delacroix, recounting every detail, every piece of evidence. She was ready to speak her truth, once and for all. The courtroom was packed on the day of Connor's trial. News of his alleged financial crimes had spread beyond the local community, drawing in curious onlookers and media representatives. Anna took the stand, her voice measured, recounting how she discovered the forged loan and the escalating pattern of deception. As she spoke, she glimpsed flashes of empathy from jurors. Marissa testified next, detailing Connor's business fraud. Several other victims followed, each with their own harrowing tales of betrayal. The evidence was damning. A web of deceit meticulously woven by a man whose charm once fooled them all. Connor's defense struggled to counter the mountain of facts. When the final verdict rang out, guilty, Anna's heart thudded with relief. She watched Connor's face fall, no longer capable of hiding behind feigned innocence. A hush fell over the room as sentencing was set for a later date. The once confident fiancé who had boasted of a prosperous future left the courthouse in handcuffs. Outside, reporters clamored for comments. Anna offered a brief statement. "I hope this brings closure for everyone hurt by his actions, and I hope it serves as a warning that betrayal has consequences." Then, with the sun warming her shoulders, she stepped away to begin the next chapter of her life, free from his shadow and triumphant in her pursuit of justice.